Well, it was that time of year again, San Diego Comic-Con. Well, actually, no, it would have been like a year and a half, 2 years before San Diego Comic-Con because that's when toys have to be created. But we had a slot for San Diego Comic-Con for the Masters of the Universe Classics line, and we knew that Comic-Con 2012, being the 30th anniversary of the brand, well, it was time to do something cool and special. Now, the company was getting behind the brand, and by the company I mean Mattel, and they commissioned some brand new artwork for the brand, which unfortunately never got used outside of being shown at San Diego Comic-Con, which is a darn shame because the artwork was absolutely beautiful and amazing. And to me, I was excited because it kind of showed that Mattel was getting behind the brand again, at least from a financial standpoint of funding things. But with Matty Collector, we kind of tried to pull out all the stops, brought out our Castle Grayskull Comic-Con booth, and knowing we had a toy slot to design, wanted to come up with something very special for the 30th. So this involved, one, looking at history. I mean, not like, pirate history, but history of the Masters of the Universe brand. Since this was the 30th anniversary, we wanted to look back on everything that the brand was built on and come up with something that would really complement what we were doing in classics, but stand on its own and still be something very unique from all of the other SKUs that we do on a monthly basis. So, looking at the history of the brand, starting with, well, I guess the original mini-comics was the first thing to look at in the way He-Man was portrayed in these, which was a little unique. He was more of a barbarian with an axe. We were also tasked from management with coming up with something for Comic-Con to make the version of the show special.
This task was appointed to you.
And this kind of meant we had a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So much as we'd done previous Comic-Con exclusives for different brands, the marching orders we had from upper management was to find a way to make the figure special for the show and still special for people who bought it online. Now that we had Matty Collector and you could do that. Previous to Matty Collector, you could only get the exclusives. So continuing to look at the history of the brand and some of the original sculpts, we looked at, do we want to do a figure based on, prototypes of He-Man? And if so, which prototype? Do we look at, again, the painted sculpts, the version where he had horns on his head? Do we look at the version where he was a brunette? Do we look at doing versions based on Mark Taylor's work? There was a lot of artwork done at the beginning of the brand and a lot of versions of He-Man that would make great figures. One that really stood out, though, was the He-Man Trio. So this is the version that was made by Roger Sweet. That's Roger on the right there, of course. And the He-Man Trio was 3 versions of a boys action-adventure character that was a bit more like Barbie, where he could be anything. He could be military, he could be Viking warrior, he could be spaceman. And Roger's idea that he pitched, calling his idea the He-Man, was that the character was literally made of muscle and could really fit into any play environment. Eventually, the barbarian look was chosen by management, but to actually design the He-Man Trio, Roger took a Big Jim toy, one of Mattel's characters from the 1970s, their sort of flagship male action brand, which was very much like that male Barbie. He was a character that could do anything from being a secret agent to a sports star. And he took the figure and applied Super Sculpty, which is a tool actually a lot of customizers use even today in order to change the way a figure looks. So he literally wrapped the figure in Sculpty and created these giant muscles. He wanted to show how the figure would be literally made of muscles. He would weigh like 750 pounds compared to a 230-pound weightlifter like Blue Arnold Schwarzenegger, apparently. So with his made-of-muscle trio ready to go and kit-bashed from different parts, he brought them in, showed them off as a new idea for a boys' action line, and eventually this became Masters of the Universe. And no, you are not having your eyes play tricks on you if you think you're seeing Boba Fett's helmet. You are. You can clearly see the 1978 Boba Fett helmet, backpack, and the missile with the little sort of grapple end, very unique to this version, was incorporated as a kit-bashed piece for the space version. So while people have imagined what these characters could look like as toys over the years, it felt like for the 30th anniversary, this was a very appropriate way to do something that A, would be unique for the brand, pay homage to the history, and be something cool for the longtime collectors that if they missed out on it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because they weren't missing a monthly figure and it was kind of, a concept character. It wasn't like we were going to make Stratos or Merman, the Comic-Con figure. Now the figure came with a lot of piece count. It was $1, one figure with a lot of snap-on pieces so that you could create all 3 of the He-Man trio figures. So it came with the parts if you wanted to make the Barbarian version, which we called Vykron, which was one of the working title names for He-Man, which was Vykor was another name, which we used for the Mark Taylor figure art. Then there was Space Ace, which was the Boba Fett helmet version, if you will, that was modified by Roger Sweet. And then finally, he took parts from an actual tank model kit and slammed it on the character, and this was Tank Top, is what we called him. Now, of course, fans weren't limited to these 3. They could really mix and match the parts all they wanted and make their ultimate version of the He-Man trio. And it's great because the customization part of the line that was built in from day one really paid off here, where you could mix and match parts from all sorts of Motu Classics figures to make all sorts of characters. Even if you wanted to make a outer space bounty hunter by filling in the helmet on Space Ace and making him look a little bit more like, a Mandalorian. In fact, people actually did do that and painted up the figure. I am not as talented as some customizers online, but I guess this is what Boba Fett might look like if he was part of the Masters of the Universe Classics line. I actually think it's pretty darn cool. All right, maybe Mattel will get the Star Wars license one day. So how are we going to make these must-have exclusives for the show and different from the version sold online? In the past, we were able to accomplish this request from management in different ways. With Orko, who is one of our San Diego Comic-Con items, we did a color change version only at the show. The one you bought online didn't change color. For Queen Marlena that we had done, we did 2 different versions in a package, but both got the same toy. So the Queen and the Space version of Marlena Glenn, everything was the same, but at the show packed out as a Queen, and then online packed out in her spacesuit. But all the parts came in the package. And the same thing was done with Vykron. We had 3 different packouts, actually. Each 3 versions of the He-Man from the He-Man trio but only one was assembled in the middle with the pieces on the outside. So the version that was sold at the show was the version as a Barbarian. And then online, you could get the Space Ace or Tank Top version, again with all of the armor off to the side. The way the armor actually went on the figure was pretty unique for Classics. It snapped on. And it didn't completely cover the wrists or the legs. It was left sort of blank on the backside. And a lot of fans kind of pushed back on this, wondering if the Horseman even designed it this way or if Mattel sort of cheaped out. As well as when you took off the Space Ace helmet or the Barbarian hair and helmet, you got this weird peg. Well, it was no different than if you removed the hair from He-Man. You weren't supposed to display it this way. Or you removed the mask from the original release of She-Ra. These toys weren't designed to be displayed without the hair or the helmet, or in this case, She-Ra's mask, to see that hole. It was a way to help dress up the figure. So, yeah, you got a lot of piece count, but they weren't meant to be displayed with nothing on and having, like when the hair pulls off. But there was a lot of pushback from fans that they were very upset that you couldn't, display the Barbarian without his helmet and just have his hair, because the hair was attached to the helmet piece. The bio on the back was really fun to write because we had to find a way to incorporate him into the mythos. And this was very much inspired by WWE. So my cubicle was across from the WWE designer, Mark Barthold. And he was working on a John Cena belt that had his theme music. And it would play constantly all day as he fine-tuned it. And to say it drove me crazy after a week or two is an understatement. But it got me thinking about how the WWE superstars would show up in outrageous costumes. And sometimes when they would defeat an opponent, they might steal their outfit or steal something that belonged to them, like their belt, etc., or other things. Their wig? I don't know. So it got me thinking, what if this is what Vykron does? And Terry Iguchi, who was the amazing designer at the time, drew up a painting unasked for, not requested. He just did this. He drew this amazing painting of Vykron battling Gygor in the arena of Cholo. Cholo, the long guy with the beard, mentioned in the DC Comics. Beastman's always saying, "By the beard of Cholo." Well, there's Cholo. So that was how we got Roger Sweet's original trio into the line as a gladiator warrior who sort of stole the equipment and the personas of his defeated opponents and wore them as a trophy. And it helped explain why one character would dress up in this outrageous way. Now, Roger had written a book called Mastering the Universe. And because of this, and in the book, he kind of, well, for lack of a better word, threw a lot of people in Mattel under the bus. So there was a little bit of bad blood between Roger Sweet and Mattel's legal department. So when I went to Mattel's legal department and said, hey, can we, call out Roger Sweet on the packaging or say this is a Sweet figure, they were like, no. He kind of said a lot of nasty stuff in his book. We are not supporting that guy. So, yeah, kind of bite the hand that feeds you, and you're no longer going to be able to get called out on package. As far as the whole presentation, I really thought we hit the nail on the head. We had done something for the 30th anniversary that really talked about the history of the brand. We made it special for the show, but boy, did this divide the fan base. About half the fans thought this was a perfect 30th anniversary item, and the other half tended to look at it as something that was absolutely trash and terrible, with the clip-on armor that looked quote-unquote cheap. Honestly, I thought it was amazing. I thought the way the Horseman designed the armor to snap on was brilliant. But yeah, I was kind of very shocked at the negative reaction because, it was meant to be a figure celebrating the 30th anniversary. It went back to one of the original designs for He-Man. I was really proud of it, and I thought we did a great way of incorporating the many, 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 many requests we had for this figure. It had to be part of the history, it had to have a unique price point, a unique packaging, something different from the monthly offerings, and it had to have a way to be packed out special for the show now that you could buy the figures online. So I thought it was awesome. I gave it my official awesome approved seal, but there were a lot of people in the fan base that just did not like the way this figure came out. Either way, it came out, it sold out, and it was a great way to celebrate He-Man.